12th of the powers, which is life. And the power of life is the ability to energize and to animate. It is vital life force energy working in our body, working through us, for us, as us, and into our creations. It's expressed in our body and then into our day through the things that we do. That's the power of life. And Charles Fillmore said that this is the purpose of the 12 powers. That as we practice these other 11 powers, living our life through the filter of these 11 powers, through the circle and the cycle, vitality and well-being are the effect of a new way of thinking and acting that we embody in this world, a new way of being and doing with a more expanded consciousness. So we're living our life consciously with intention and activity. Now, we don't always do this. We may live with intention, but an activity has to express from that intention or nothing changes. And, I talk about how we all have soul purpose. Well, as we are each an infinite being in a body, right? In unity, we say we're the activity of God in this world. And so our soul's purpose is to just feel that more and more and get so good at experiencing that, even in really challenging situations, to feel and be the activity of God in this world. And we do that by having new experiences. And having new experiences and embodying that feeling, we just go deeper and deeper into the embodiment of our Christ consciousness or our centered self. So this is what it means to expand our consciousness. It's not about getting enlightenment, though we're remembering, our soul self, our divine self, but remember, on a soul level, we're already enlightened. Our soul's like, yeah, I get the oneness. I feel oneness with all things. Yeah, like all souls know that. But in our body, it's about remembering that, right? Remembering it. And it's our new experiences and doing new things that help us get that, right? That help us expand our consciousness. So we're expanding our consciousness not by reading spiritual books. We expand our consciousness by doing new things. I don't know if you've ever traveled somewhere and when you get home, you feel like a new person. I remember when I went with my kids to Ashland, Oregon, and I came home, Deanna 2.0. I was not the same Deanna that came back from that trip. If you can remember when you learned to ride a bicycle, that changed you as a kid. That moment changed you. That's an expansion in consciousness. I know for myself, I was 25 years old when I decided I would go back to school. That changed me, right? So there was an expansion in consciousness. So the expansion in our consciousness happens with the way we are thinking and being and doing in this world. And that is the activity of life with a capital L. The power of life is all that new activity. Now, sometimes in spiritual circles, we often think in the terms of change your thinking, change your life. I'll change my thinking, and that'll change my life. But there's something that happens here in the middle that's implied, but many spiritual teachers don't talk about that. They say, change your thinking, and you'll change your life. Okay, well, we can change our thinking, but then just go back to how we were. See, there's something in here that we do differently. That's what changes our life. Change your thinking, then do something different with the power of vital force, life, moving through you, and then your life changes. Now, I know we've all talked about this before, how there's so many lottery winners who win millions of dollars and then they blow through all those millions in just a few years because they didn't change their thinking. They kept in this, they were still in lack consciousness. Now, we've all gotten lucky and had a windfall of some sort, but then it just moves through our life and is gone if we don't change our thinking. Now, somebody who's stuck in lack consciousness, when they receive a windfall, they want to spend that money doing something they normally can't afford. Right? Oh, it's like, normally, I couldn't afford to travel, so I'm going to do that. Normally, I couldn't afford to get this brand new car or buy a boat or book a trip to space. So I'm just going to go ahead and buy all these things. Well, then all the money's gone because the activity in here, right, between changing thinking and we change our life, well, nothing actually changed here in our activity. Now, in the book of John, John makes this connection. Yeah, you can book a trip to space, Jared. But John makes the connection. He says, God is all things. God is life, light, love. God is all things. And then John even goes on to say, just to be clear, right? He wants everybody to really understand it. He says, and there's not one thing that's here that didn't come from God. Like, he really wants us to get that everything comes from God. And then he says the word was in the beginning, and that very word was with God, and God was that word. What he's saying is source declared itself into manifestation. That's the word. If word was a cosmic math problem, how it would be written out is the word, and then the equal sign, and then parentheses, intention plus activity equals new creation, new manifestation, new experience. That's what word equals. Intention plus this specific activity created a universe. Intention plus this specific activity created the galaxies, and then the solar system, and then our planet Earth, and then all of this stuff that we see on this planet all came from intention followed by activity. Okay, so something changed. So something new appeared. Now, we are created in the image and likeness of our Creator, so we create in our lives as Source creates in the universal. We have our let there be light moment too, right? Our let there be light, though, is going to be, different. It's not going to be as big as the world, but it might be, well, I want to read more books, but I don't want to keep adding to my library, right? Into my home library. I don't want to own a bunch of books. I'm just going to read the one time. So maybe that's our let there be light moment. So here we set the intention, well, I want to read more, but here's the intention, but I don't want to keep buying books. So between here and here, we do something different. We learn how to rent ebooks from the library. We learn how to borrow ebooks, right? We get a Kindle or we visit the library. We do this part's different to get us this. I want to read more books without buying a bunch of books. My personal let there be light right now has to do with the quarantine 15. Like when we first went on quarantine in the pandemic, I heard about the quarantine 15. It was like people putting on 15 pounds, right? Well, I didn't hit 15, but I hit 10. So my let there be light moment was, it will not become 15. It will not be 15. But I had gotten back on sugar and I hadn't been working out. And it was like, all these things here I was doing were different than when I was off sugar and when I was feeling better. So my let there be light moment had to change what was happening in here. And so like for myself, like, okay, release that quarantine 10 and I want that out here. So what's all the stuff I'm going to do here differently, right? I go back to working out and I have to write out my meals. I have to plan my meals ahead of time because if I'm standing in front of the fridge hungry and tired, I'm just going to grab the can of olives and the jar of peanut butter. I mean, I'm tired. Okay. And cheese puffs. Okay. That's great. So when all my meals are planned, everything happening here is different. I changed my I changed my thinking, but I changed what I'm doing to get this out here. Okay. So Florence Scovel Shinn, you know, she says life loves activity. And that's like one of my favorite quotes. Life loves our doingness, our having new experiences. Yeah, tortillas. Yeah, right. No more tortillas, right? I love seeing all the chat stuff. Yeah. So we think about something and then we do it differently in here to get it out here. Now, the center in the body for the power of life is our reproductive area down there. The color is red. The disciple who represents life is Judas. Judas, the traitor. Yeah, because he represents the cleansing of selfishness and allowing life to flow to every part of the body and then out into our lives. It's funny, he's the most famous of all the disciples. Like I even like can't ever remember, but people will be like, well, isn't it Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans? It's like, no, those aren't the disciples. But everybody knows Judas. Judas is a disciple. I mean, his name is synonymous with traitor. We all have, I don't know, well, I don't know about all of you, but it's like, oh yeah, I met this person. I let them into my life and trusted them. They turned into such a Judas. Like even the knife is still in my back, right? So that's how we see Judas. But Judas represents the unredeemed life forces, the life force we did not put to work. Okay, the life forces that we imagined it in here, we set an intention and we knew what we wanted, but we didn't do differently in here to get that. Okay, that's what Judas represents. He represents the part of humanity that has a higher vision for something, but then resorts to underhanded methods to get it. Okay, I don't know. Like I kind of think politics there when I think of that. Like, oh, we're going to do this for our country. But yeah, I'm just going to bash the other guy a whole bunch right here because that's all I can figure out how to do. I just got to make you hate this other person more than you hate me, right? See, Judas fell into that trap. Judas believed that Jesus was the savior and he wanted Jesus to do something. But see, Judas thought Jesus was a political savior. So he thought if he could set Jesus up to get trapped and threatened, then Jesus would then step into his power, right? See, Judas followed Jesus around. He heard the teachings, but he didn't put anything into action, right? He got stuck in conditions. All right, here we are, the last Harry Potter character, the last one representing the power of life is he who shall not be named, Lord Voldemort. Oh yeah, Lord Voldemort, because he served not as a great example, but as a horrible warning. We hear about our potential all the time. We're like, oh, I know my potential. I have so much potential. Everybody tells me I do. Deanna tells me I have all this potential. But then what do? We turn to the dark forces. Okay, so Lord Voldemort. You know, he went to Hogwarts as a young man and he was brilliant. He was so good in school. Like he became like the prefect and the head boy of his house. Then he graduated and he couldn't let go of resentment and wanting revenge on his father for abandoning him. He got stuck in an orphanage, having guardians that were not very nice to him. He had a hard life. He did. So he set out into the world to learn the dark arts. He was going to learn the dark arts because he was going to manipulate and control his environment so he would always be the one with the most power. Okay, he was never going to let anything bad happen to himself again. Sometimes we turn to the dark arts too in our own life. Don Miguel Ruiz calls this the black magic. Carolyn Mace calls it being a spellcaster. And we are a spellcaster, or we practice black magic in our own life. Every time we look out here and see a limited condition, and then we want to manipulate or control to try to feel better about ourselves. So if somebody envies another person and their gifts and talents, and then says something really mean to that person to take them down a notch, okay, that's practicing the dark arts, right? Thinking, well, they were just getting too big for their britches, I had to take them down a notch, right? That's practicing the dark arts. Somebody who's entrusted with a secret and then goes out and tells the secret, or somebody who lies about another person or gossips about another person, criticizes them, like to make them feel bad about themselves. Not a criticism like, well, there was kind of too much salt in there, so next time don't use so much salt, right? Not that kind of criticism, but a criticism that attacks them at their core. You're not enough, and you have to do this thing to be enough and to be acceptable. When we do that to ourselves, we're practicing the dark arts on ourselves. When we spiral into shame and this feeling of not enough, I'm not enough because I don't have this degree, or I don't have this many clients, or I don't have this much so-and-so. Okay, that is practicing the dark arts on ourselves. All right, so Voldemort practiced the dark arts. Addiction, yes, addiction. That's the dark arts right there, turning to addiction, thinking that thing out there, oh, I need that ice cream, I need those Cheetos, I need that drink, I need those drugs, that will make everything feel better. Okay, that's the dark arts. Now, Voldemort, he feared death, though they don't really talk about this a lot in the story. He feared death enough to take his soul and break it up into different parts and hide it away in these little secret places and put a spell on it so nobody could find it. So if he got zapped with a deadly curse, well, he wouldn't really die. But he also was afraid of Dumbledore. Okay, Professor Dumbledore is the only wizard Voldemort ever feared. Now think about Dumbledore in the 12 powers represents wisdom. Well, when we tap into wisdom, what do we just do? We go here, we clear our restrictions, we clear those obstacles, right? We overcome the challenges. And right there with wisdom, we take responsibility. We stop abdicating our authority. We stop saying, oh, well, this thing out there needs to change so I can be happy and I can feel better. No, when we have wisdom, we're like, okay, yeah, maybe this bad thing happened. What can I do now? What can I do now? Well, this is the thing I can do now. Okay, that's what we do with wisdom. That's why Voldemort was afraid of Dumbledore. Voldemort couldn't handle that, the wisdom. He was not ready to stop abdicating his own authority, which is what Voldemort did. Voldemort abdicated his authority. He wanted to be the all-powerful wizard, but he was focused all on the crappy stuff that had happened to him and all the conditions outside of himself that he wanted to control. Voldemort even tried to kill Harry Potter when he was just 1 year old, right? When Harry was a little baby, because Voldemort heard a prophecy that there might be somebody who would kill him later on, right? So you can see that Voldemort actually caused all the bad stuff that happened to him. If he had never gone after Harry, like all of this stuff wouldn't have happened. I mean, he still was an evil wizard, but see, Harry, he couldn't kill Harry because his mother loved him so much. She sacrificed herself for him. So when Voldemort cast that unforgivable curse, it bounced off Harry and went back to Voldemort. And that's what turned him into that like withered little breath of life that he had left. Okay, love is a force. It's a cosmic force. It's attractive, unifying, and harmonizing. And when we embody love, that's how we open the way to move into our Christ consciousness and our centered self. And remember, love is that power that's like, here's some more good. And I want to keep creating. Come on, open up. Here we go. Here's more stuff. Here's more good. Here's more energy for you to send out into the world. That's love. Spirit, source, wanting to keep creating through each of us. Now, after Voldemort tried to kill Harry, for the next 10 years, he wandered around, and his only recourse was to possess little rats and snakes. That's the best he could do, right? That's not living. That's not living. So he finally was able to possess a wizard, and then he drank some unicorn blood, but then the wizard died, and he was left back to wandering in the wilderness, possessing snakes. He was waiting for his followers to come save him. He was waiting for one of the Death Eaters to come rescue him. And then he had to wait for one of his followers to perform this little minor spell to get him into a tiny shriveled body that could be carried around. Then he had to wait for this other spell to be enacted and for more Death Eaters to come. So then he could have a spell cast that put him back into his grown-up body. He was always waiting for something out here to change, right? There was nothing coming from here on Mr. Lord Voldemort. It's all focused out there. When we are waiting for conditions out here to change, well, I need this to change so then I can be happy. And I need this to go back to normal because I'm tired of wearing a mask. And I need this to like maybe upscale a little bit here, right? So that I can have a little bit more good here. When we're waiting on that, we give all our power to that. There it goes, boom, right? So we've not activated and called forth the vital life force energy to do all this in our life, to change this. We're waiting for that thing to change. We're working it backwards. Now, I said Voldemort, he sent his soul out into these different places thinking he'd protect himself. And this is what seemed to make him invincible. Well, Harry and his friends figured out how to break the spell on all of that, and it made him weak. But see, what really made Voldemort weak was that he blamed every bad thing that ever happened. First of all, on his dad abandoning him, not being cared for properly by his guardians. It was like blame, blame, blame. Okay, and then when he tried to kill Harry and the spells zapped back at him, from that point forward, it was blaming Harry for everything. Voldemort, he couldn't get past that. He obsessed over it. That's why he was stuck relying on controlling his environment. Okay, the manipulation, the fear, right? He had to keep doing that. That is actually what took him out. That's what took him out in the end. When we are relying on outer conditions to change, this is what weakens us. This is what eventually takes us out. We start hemorrhaging our vital life force energy every time we blame a condition outside of ourselves. Okay, now it's true, maybe something bad happened, but it's not supposed to control us the rest of our life. And if we give it that power by blaming it for the rest of our life, it has our power. So if we're focusing on blaming this thing, and if we're focusing on wanting revenge, well, I'm going to get that person if it's the last thing I do, right? If we're focused on, well, I need that apology. That person, man, they really messed me up with all their bad whatever, and I need that apology. I need them to understand what they did to me. I need them to accept that so I can move on, right? When we're focused on that, like I need somebody to understand and admire and see my greatness. I need somebody to see that so then I can feel like good about myself. See, if we're stuck on that, we're hemorrhaging vital life force energy. The only way we're not hemorrhaging is when we go here first. We go here first. Back to the principles. God is all things. That means me. That means me. And all my crunchiness and imperfections and tantrums and drama, I am still an expression of God right here, right now. I am enough, right as I am. Doesn't matter if I got a bottle of tequila in one hand and a pizza in the other hand, I am still enough. Then we have faith in that. And we start the process, we put the tequila down, we put the pizza down, we put the shopping down, right? The whatever down, we put it down. We go into that cycle of the 12 powers, or however you surrender to those 12 powers. There are people working with the 12 powers that don't know that they're 12 powers. So we go here. Now, Voldemort focused on conditions. Voldemort had no faith. No faith. He had a fear of death. He was focused on conditions. He didn't even have faith in his own followers. Voldemort could not utilize the powers of strength and power and will. He said he was strong because he could cast spells and he could kill a lot of people, but he kept focusing on the limitations. He kept focusing on the blame and needing to have power over people, needing to kill Harry so then he could be happy. Voldemort did not utilize the power of wisdom. We had no faith. He was acting out of fear of death all the time. He was acting out of needing to kill Harry so then he could be happy. Voldemort could not tap into the power of love, right? The attractive, harmonizing, unifying power of the universe. He couldn't understand that there was a power that wanted to work through him and create more good through him, for him, as him. He couldn't get that, right? His lack of faith kept him from embodying it. The power of imagination. Well, he was focused on revenge. That's all he could see in his imagination. But because he had no faith, and he was not working with the power of strength, power, and will, he couldn't see or imagine that there could have been other possibilities. He could have been an instructor at Hogwarts. He could have started a family. But the bigger vision was not available to Voldemort. The power of understanding, well, we know through reading the stories that it was all these different events happening together that led to his downfall. Voldemort could not put any of that together, nothing, because he was so focused on his vengeance. The power of order. Well, right there, he broke a spiritual law by fragmenting his soul out into these different places, not trusting in the power that works through him, for him, as him. I mean, he knew spells, but he was chaos, was what he was. The power of zeal. Well, zeal comes with divine inspiration. Now, Voldemort was motivated by revenge, but zeal does not participate in revenge. Zeal comes only with divine inspiration. And even if he had received divine inspiration, he would have blown it off. He wouldn't have had awareness of it because he was not walking in faith. And then, of course, the power of release. Voldemort could not let anything go. He could not let anything go. Yeah, it was horrible that his father abandoned him. That was horrible. And as a child, like, he suffered from that, as any child would. That was not fair. That was wrong. And his dad, that was just bad. That was bad on his dad. But then Tom Riddle grew up into an adult. And then that's when he would take responsibility for healing from that, right? We can only blame our parents while we're children. Okay, once we turn into adults, that's on us. That's on us. Now, as a result, Voldemort was not allowing the vital life force to work through him and express into his life. Voldemort was so lacking, in fact, in that life force energy that he had to constantly be manipulating and focusing out here on what he could get. Voldemort created hell on earth. Hell on earth. And like, all of us are perfectly capable of creating that, right? We've all participated in that to some degree. Now, all the other characters that played with us in the 12 powers, okay, the other 11 characters, they always focused on what they could give. Like, in that moment, they would ask the question basically like, well, what do I have right now that I could give that could help in this moment? Now, a lot of times, spiritual folks, we get caught up in our spiritual gifts, and we might think of service as, oh, well, I want to be of service, but I want to give in a way that feels good to me and like expresses my talents and allows me to use my crystals and my incense, right? And I love crystals and I love incense. But being of service is about bringing to others what they need right now. Okay, I can remember one time being of service, cleaning some dirty stuff for another person. Like, that was like, I want to be of service. I want to sing you a song, make your day better, right? But we do what's needed in that moment. The other characters who played in this game with us, the 12 powers, They ask, what is needed right now? What is the part that I can play right now? How do I get to participate right now? How can I serve? How can I carry as much light as possible in this moment? We're all here to expand our light, expand our consciousness through discovering our divinity in the new ways that we experience ourselves. We're here to expand our light. So we could just ask, well, how can I be an even bigger expression of love and good right here, right now? And that is how we create heaven on earth. So until next time, remember that you are the activity of spirit in a body, right? Man, that's what we are, the activity of spirit in a body. You are the heart and the hands of spirit in this world. You are soul designed to do all of this stuff. You are designed for growth, goodness, and expansion. And everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.